Change of pace coming up now. We have with us now Dr. Grace Zavuoto, who's an intelligent lady. She's really incredible. She's been on the show many times. She's a widely read writer, national, well-known weekly for the Washington Times. She's the founder and executive editor of the Edmund Burke Institute. She knows conservatives inside and out. She knows what's what in the real conservative movement. She's not easily hoodwinked by anybody. And she wrote a fabulous article, Contract with the Devil, Tea Party Considers Electing Newt Gingrich. So as you could see, she's not a fan of Newt Gingrich. I'm telling you that right up front. And I figured it's best she describe her viewpoint. Dr. V, welcome to the Savage Nation. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Michael, for having me on, and thank you for that glowing introduction.
Well, Grace, this is a tough thing to do, isn't it? I mean, look, I'm missing. People are not understanding me today. I'm telling them that Newt is a K Street insider. His baggage is so old. His suitcase doesn't even have wheels. I'm trying to put it in a nice way that he's unelectable. I'm telling him Ron Paul's unelectable. What do you think?
Well, Michael, I think that the Tea Party has to understand one very simple point. If you are a Tea Party member and you support Newt Gingrich, you are selling out every principle that you hold dear. In essence, if you're a Tea Party member and you support Newt Gingrich, I'm prepared to call you a complete hypocrite. What's happening, Michael, is this. The Tea Party has risen, really coming out of nowhere, and I think it is the last great hope of this republic. The Tea Party is really solid.
Absolutely. Remember what they did in 2010? They gave us a sweep. And look what's happened now.
Exactly. And you know what happens, Michael? This is the problem. The Tea Party is on the cusp of a great victory, which is we are on the cusp of overthrowing this radical president and actually getting a sane leader to lead us once again. And as they're tasting power, the Tea Party is becoming corrupted by that taste for power. And I'm here to say it's time to just pull back for one moment.
Well, wait, hold on now. When you say corrupted, you don't mean that any of the politicians are buying them, are you?
No, I don't mean that at all. What I mean to say is there's an excitement, an energy, a sense of renewal. Hey, we can actually retake the White House. We can do this.
But the Tea Party is an American kingmaker, despite what the media has people believing. They are still a kingmaker, but why have they been hoodwinked by Newt Gingrich is the question.
That is the question, and it is people like you and I and many others out there who know Newt's record and know him very well who have to go out there and tell the rest of the country what he's all about. And let me say it as candidly and frankly as I can. Newt Gingrich cares about one thing and one thing only, and it's making money. He will do or say anything to line his pockets. That is the one consistent thread in his career. He is a man who is absolutely ruthless in the pursuit of self-advancement, and he's betrayed everyone and anyone that has crossed his path. He's even sold out his key principles when they're not convenient to him. And we see that even within the last couple of weeks where he says something and then when it doesn't appear convenient, he backtracks on it. And that shows you the kind of person he is.
Well, also, Grace, let's be real here. You're on the stage now, we see the stage before the election. On the right side is a fat old white man who is tainted with corruption, and on the left side is a nice young black guy with a nice family. Would you say that Obama wins by 30 or 40 points?
I think it would be a huge victory for Obama, especially since independents have said, by at least 40% of independents have said they will absolutely never vote for someone like Gingrich. And it's, as you point out, Michael, there is a culture now that does value looks and does value charm.
Right.
And Obama beats Gingrich in that regard. But
yes.
There's another point, too.
Wait, but let's stick to that for one more minute. There's only one candidate who is good-looking enough to take him on the looks thing, and that's Romney, because he looks like a president. He has a wonderful wife and a wonderful family, by the way, that will hold up to anybody in the entire history of the presidency. Don't underestimate that power. Now, of course, he's a liberal conservative. He's a liberal Republican, more in the lines of a Rockefeller, a check pants Republican, a country club Republican. We know that. But I would sleep better at night with Romney than I would with Obama, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would be taking us back to a traditional path. in the sense of having a leader that is actually going to stand up for American interests, both abroad and at home. So, I mean, we can't even compare Obama and Romney.
Right, and as a Christian, irrespective of what some of the fundamentalists say about his Mormonism, he understands the dangers of Islam far better than does Barack Hussein Obama.
Absolutely. And you know, Michael, he represents the traditional values in his own life, having been married only once, and there's no taint of scandal, sexual scandal around this man. Look at this man, Mr. Gingrich. I mean, if we would elect him, we would basically have Callista as our first lady. She was his mistress. She wrecked his marriage. We'd basically have a harlot as our first lady.
Grace, you're being too harsh on Mrs. Gingrich, aren't you? I love what you wrote. You said, blah, blah, blah. You talk about the illicit sex triumphs of Newt Gingrich, and you would say America would resemble France, and you say, ironically, it would not be the left that would lead to the election of one of the most debauched leaders in American history. It would be the right. And then you write, even the disgraced and impeached former President Bill Clinton, despite all his philandering, still has only one wife and therefore has more honor than Mr. Gingrich.
That's absolutely right. And honestly, don't underestimate this point. I know you laughed at it, but I'm really dead set on it. Look, Callista was his mistress, and then she would be our first lady, and we as conservatives with a straight face would go to the nation and say, you know, this is the kind of family values that we uphold. Have we lost our minds here?
How has Gingrich, Dr. V, how has Gingrich so ensnared so many decent conservatives into thinking he is a new man? How has he done this?
I think it's because there's a sense of desperation out there. Romney just hasn't caught fire with the conservative base, and they're just looking for anybody and anything to replace him. You know, they want an alternative to him, and so they're just clinging to anything. So
Gingrich and Ron Paul basically represent the anti-Romney.
I think so, and it's a sense of desperation out there. Conservatives just desperately want someone that they think, you know, represents their values.
But why is Romney... Grace, come on, you're a political watcher as I am. Romney knows going into this a year ago that he was known as Mr. Milquetoast, middle of the road, no fire in the belly. What the heck is going on with his advisors telling him to remain silent? Why?
You mean remain silent on what point?
No, why is Romney silent on all points? He's basically a non-candidate. All he's standing there is like, he looks like the guy in high school or college who got all the girls without saying anything. Is that what he thinks is going to happen?
Oh, no, Michael, I think you are vastly underestimating this man. He has very carefully laid out his campaign. He's got such an impressive ground game. He has spent so much time pressing a lot of flesh and impressing the key people in the party and across the country. He has so much money in his war chest. Are you kidding me?
But wait, I understand all of that. Then why has he not caught fire? You yourself said 2 minutes ago Romney has not caught fire. Now you're saying he's got a great campaign on the ground, so why has he not caught fire?
Well, what I'm saying is that he hasn't caught fire in the sense of kindling a lot of enthusiasm, but he has a very impressive campaign strategy. So those are two different things.
So what is what do you think is Romney's campaign strategy is? What, he's holding his powder until he's ready to go to war with Obama? Is that what's going to happen? Then he's going to open up?
Well, he's presenting himself as a moderate. He doesn't want to go too far to the right, even within the primaries. So then he's going to attract the independents and all the people that are disaffected with Obama, as well as the conservatives, because the conservatives got nowhere else to go.
Why? Okay, but wait a minute. But I disagree with you. This is the problem. On the face of it, Romney could beat Obama just standing on the stage. But if the conservative base does not come out for Romney, he can't win. They will not automatically vote for him. They won't do it because he won't excite them. Unless he excites them, they won't vote for him. I saw that happen with Meg Whitman, for example. She made a huge error running in California. Here's a woman who has a great story to tell, right? She built a fortune on her own. Billions of dollars. I watched the campaign in California. She played exactly where Romney is. I wouldn't be surprised if his advisors aren't the same one. She played the middle. She wouldn't say a word about illegal aliens. She wouldn't say a word about what was going on in California, about the welfare state. She wouldn't talk about the fraud and corruption. And she lost. She lost to a man who was from another era, Jerry Brown. It's very reminiscent of Romney versus Obama, by the way. Jerry Brown had so much left-wing baggage. How did he win? Because he had the unions and because Meg Whitman did not excite the base. And I think Romney's going to lose if he continues to play the middle.
Well, I think that the point that I was trying to make, Michael, was not so much about Romney's campaign strategy, but what the Tea Party needs to do and what the Tea Party needs.
All right, so I didn't mean to distract us, but go for it. Say it.
Because I was just basically saying that, and I wrote the piece on it because I'm absolutely incensed that we would even consider a candidate like Newt Gingrich, because the Tea Party is founded on the premise that we need to clean up Washington. Okay. And here you have somebody that is responsible. I mean, I put him as responsible for someone like Obama being elected, because Obama campaigned in 2008 that he was going to clean up Washington. It was people like Gingrich that are so corrupt, that so turned the public off, that it led to this wild swing to a radical extreme, and the people got caught up in this frenzy of emotion. Yes. And Michael, I wanted to say something. This is kind of like, we have so many points to cover. But you know, when you said this whole idea of catching fire, we've got to be careful with candidates that are purely based on enthusiasm and emotion. That's what the Obama candidacy was all about. It was like a frenzy, and he hadn't been fully vetted, and now we see what happened. What we see with Romney on the other end, and that's why I think that he remains the front runner, despite the fact that he's not, wildly, spurring wild enthusiasm, is that he just seems to be very steady, very solid. He just keeps plodding along, But regarding
all right, Dr. Volto, what about Ron Paul? I mean, I am embarrassed to listen to some of these sound bites that we've been playing today on the show. Where do you stand on Ron Paul?
Ron Paul, I think, is absolutely exciting and intoxicating when he talks about the extent to which he'd like to cut back government. However, most of the time when he talks, he comes across as somebody that really belongs in a different century. I mean, he is just out of touch with the current situation, especially in foreign affairs. When he talks about on foreign affairs, he comes across really as an academic who belongs in an ivory tower.
Well, okay, you're being very, very kind to him. But we have a soundbite from September 12, 2011, not from 1911, where he says that all of the attacks by Islamists around the world are a result of occupation of the West Bank. Does this lunatic not understand that Muslims are attacking around the world, Russia, China, Africa, Indonesia, without any regard to what's going on in the Middle East? Does he understand any of that?
Well, look, he's an ideologue. He really thinks that war enlarges the state, that a very robust foreign policy adds to big government. So he sees everything through that lens, and I think that's the mistake of being an ideologue. You have to be able to assess every situation on a case-by-case point, as conservatives should, because we're supposed to be practical, without ideology, just able to see the truth. The problem with him is he so hates government that he thinks that a large military or a large presence abroad adds to the expansion of government, which it does. But unfortunately, that's part of what it takes to protect our national self-interest, and that's the problem I have with Ron Paul, is he wants a perfect vision of limited government, and that's just completely unrealistic with all the dangers that we face abroad.
Right. Yes, that's true. Now, people should know that you were an assistant professor of modern British and European history at Howard University, that you specialize in diplomatic, intellectual, and imperial history, which is very important for people to understand, is that you have a context in which to discuss Ron Paul or Newt Gingrich. I don't think they understand the difference between a pundit who has no education whatsoever, who is talking about them, and a professor who understands where they fit historically. Would you agree with that?
I do agree, and also I have to say, Michael, I also look at politics, because I'm a historian, in a very sober way. Basically, I've been saying for a long time on the airwaves and in my articles, this election for conservatives is going to be electing somebody who we dislike the least, not someone who we absolutely love, because the field of candidates is very, very weak.
Yes.
I wrote a previous article called America's Leadership Crisis. The problem we face nowadays, Michael, is that we just do not have great men and women who are out there able to lead us. We don't have the concept of the great men and women in our history books. So how can we have them in our current lives? One of the things that you see is if we have such a weak educational structure, we have such a weak moral fiber across the country, how can we suddenly expect that we're going to get grand leaders, say, at the same caliber of our founding fathers? It's just not going to happen.
Well, forget them. Even let's go back to Winston Churchill as a great leader, a wartime leader. Or even in our own country, we had leaders with moral fiber and leadership ability. Dwight Eisenhower, would you say he was a great leader?
Oh, absolutely. But I think what you've seen is, I was in academia when there was this huge battle going on between the historians who wanted to uphold the great men in the history books, teach them, and continue to actually do research on the great leaders. And we basically lost out to a new crop of academics who came in, and all they wanted to do was studies on race and gender and do what was known as history from below. So they basically wanted to say, it's people, it's movements that make history. It's not, it's large groups of people. It's the masses who make history.
Oh,
it's a Marxist theory.
Group. Communism. Well, even they would have to understand that the great slaughterer, Mao Zedong, was a man. He was not just people. He was the leader of the slaughter of 60 million of his fellow Chinese, either through direct killing or through starvation. They don't understand that. Stalin, the killer of 30 million Russians, they don't understand that.
Well, you are right, Michael, but we lost out in academia. So a lot of the historians that used to want to teach along those lines were replaced. And so what do you have? There was a trickle effect the last couple of decades, even percolating into the history books. The history books are practically unreadable because they've taken the great individuals out of them.
Yes, I understand completely. Dr. Grace Vuoto, always an incredibly stimulating guest, and I'm amazed that we had such a great discussion since I'm not asleep, you're not asleep, but you think most of America would be asleep this week? Grace, they're not. They're listening to this show in droves. You know why? There may not be any leaders, but the people are starving for one. And I thank you very much for being with us to help them understand what they're missing. I'll be right back on the Savage Nation. Savage.